But 18% of Trump voters, see the bottom line here, say Trump is completely to blame. If you add it up with the others, it's even higher. But that's, you know, it's going up for Trump voters to say it's all on him. Doug Flynn joins us now, who, by the way, is who I blame for all of this. He's our money man on this show, and he's here. Look at this in studio. Very, very surprising to make it. Did you take the helicopter in from Long Island, I assume, to join us?
Good old Long Island Railroad.
Right. That's the affordability crisis. So they actually charge a pretty penny for this. What do you make of that? The fact that, you know, the way people are kind of seeing it. It always happens when a new president comes in for, you know, you get that little bit of honeymoon period, and now it's like, all right, yeah, maybe you need to get to work on this.
Well, he also campaigned on the fact that he was going to lower prices, and that's probably not a great idea, because what you really want, and he alluded to it after some of those other crazy comments about how this was a con job and everything, is really just lowering the rate of inflation, because if you think about it, their messaging is just terrible. They could simply say, inflation's up 25% in the last 5 years. It is.
Yes.
22% of that is un-Biden. So that's a different way to say the same thing. So those are all true facts. And so, but it's cumulative. So everybody's feeling the impact of it on top of it. So even this last 3%, which is where we are in inflation now, is on top of all the other inflation before. So it always feels worse. And if personally your income is not keeping pace or outpacing that, you feel like you're falling behind.
Well, you're not really a political guy. You're looking at the money all the time and following it that way. And I wonder what someone like you thinks of how much blame or credit, like, do presidents and politicians get too much credit and also a little bit too much blame? I mean, inflation, we used to talk about this when Biden was president too, because his folks would come on and say, this is a problem everywhere, which was, you know, that was true too. There was a problem around the world post-COVID. So what would you say?
When you dig into it, the other thing that they're saying to lower prices is deflation. And
you don't want that.
You do not want that, because what that does is it just says, if people think that TVs or anything is going to be cheaper in 6 or 12 months, you see these in some of these other countries, they're not going to spend. They're going to wait for it to get cheaper. So deflation is terrible. What you really do want is just a very low amount of inflation. So the messaging is terrible, and people are feeling it, and jobs are sort of at issue. So you can kind of see why people are thinking that. But they got to change the messaging if they want to change, or they're going to continue to blame Trump.
I think that's a really good point, because I think we got away from, but we used to talk about that a lot. Inflation's a weird problem, because it's by definition, all inflation is higher prices. And to your point, you kind of want prices to be a little higher, right? But that's hard, because then people are going to say, oh, the bread costs more. Well, you know, and that's a tough thing politically.
You just have to earn more and outpace it. Right. And that's the way you slightly move ahead.
That's a tough issue, which brings us to the next point, which I found interesting in another poll that came out. Young people. Yeah. So young people are, I think generally, I was looking at the past numbers compared to, you know, middle-aged or older people, they're usually relatively optimistic. Like, they'll look at it, they had numbers from like 08, 09 when we were in the quote-unquote Great Recession, and young people were like, all right, not too bad, you know. But now they're more pessimistic.
They are.
Than the young people were back then, which is interesting.
The big difference, I think, is if you look at those two scenarios, and you could definitely argue that during the Great Recession was a much worse scenario than we are currently in from a jobs picture, and the whole economy was teetering.
Well, we were scared I mean, I used to talk to you all the time during that. And
absolutely.
Everybody was that was a little older was scared, but the young people were not as much.
They weren't.
Now they're worried about AI.
And I think it is more the inflation part, and also that they feel they're falling behind. That's the problem. The older people are actually weathering this pretty well, because they're in a better financial picture. So younger people are concerned, and there's worries about AI and the other threats to their business, their jobs, and whatever business they're in. So I think those things are weighing on people. But it's like anything else. You have to embrace the fact that things are always going to change. They might have been changing differently for the people before you. It's really no different in that respect now, but it's just a lot of uncertainty. I think that gives people pause. And there was a lot of overhiring during COVID, and some of that is unraveling. And you see it in some of the jobs. First you see management getting laid off, and then you see no more hiring, and then you see no raises, and then you start to see layoffs. We haven't even really seen mass layoffs yet.
You think we will real quick, or?
I'm not sure if you will overall, if they can get if we can get lower interest rates, that's going to get things moving. I think they want that. They need that. That will sort of stem some of that. But if you don't, you're going to have a lot more layoffs than you would.
All right. Kevin Hassett, by the way, said they're going to cut by 25 points. And I think isn't he the chairman now? He said that.
Apparently.
Thank you, Doug. Doug Flynn in studio, right? The great Doug Flynn. All right, closing.